Put your hands together for the late morning program with your host, Nam Ross.
Jahnavi, welcome.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Cheers.
2019, here we go. 2019. So thanks for coming on again. Your last podcast is very nice, except we didn't really dive deep into some certain topics. So
the giggles.
Let's
we
do
tried
that.
to cover a lot of things, and sometimes,
Yeah. So you put up a Facebook post yesterday about things that what do people want to hear about? So what were some of the things, just an overview, some of the things that were said that were important and not just anyway.
Just totally professional, right? Well, I think a lot of people put stuff about kirtan.
Yeah, right.
Seems to be a popular topic to talk about. Then women's issues.
Women's issues.
And there were a few different interesting things about how to kind of understand this generation's relationship with Srila Prabhupada's books and how
that was a good
what
one.
is our
that was
role
a good question.
and, ISKCON leadership, succession, or something like that. I guess that's also these are all like good topics.
Yes, so today is actually the disappearance of Yamuna Devi, right?
Yeah.
That's really nice. I never got to meet her, and that's a big regret in my life. But you had a lot of association with her and everything. So why don't you tell us a bit about that? Tell us a bit about your relationship with her. She's very inspiring. For people who don't know, she's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, our founder of ISKCON, and she sang the Govindam prayers with George Harrison. Yeah. And we played every morning at all ISKCON temples, as Prabhupada wanted. And she was a very inspiring singer and devotee, and inspiration for many people. So tell us a bit about your relationship with her.
Yeah, I think I talked a bit about it on the last podcast. I think I described. Yeah, we talked about it a bit.
Okay,
all
I remember.
Those weeks ago.
Yeah.
I think I described my first meeting with her as
right.
When I was
you had said something that she said to you regarding what we were talking about. I think it was
possibly, yeah. So just to quickly recap in case somebody didn't watch that episode, she was around in England before I was born, and she's from America, but she was living in England for some time, and so my mom knew her. My mom was at that time like a young unmarried ashram resident at the temple, and they used to go to their house for training every weekend. They were actually going over there and learning things about cooking and how to perform deity worship and so I mean it's hard to kind of summarize what she was, because she was so so much to say in every area of her life, all her talents and accomplishments. But I grew up like knowing of her as a presence of a famous person within our society. But I also I remember that I met her when I was a child in India. I was about 7 years old. But I described last time when I was 17, 18, and I was just kind of beginning to find my own exploration of faith and practice. I met her for like a 24-hour period, and that was in Vancouver, north of Vancouver, Sharnagati, in the mountains where she was staying at the time. And that experience really left such a deep impression on me, so much so that when we were driving away, I had this very deep feeling that what she is or what she values, I want to also put my life in that. I want to also devote my life to that. Like, I want that. I want to not that I was thinking, oh, I can be like her, but and you have that sense like a hero, like I want to be like that. I want to aspire to be like that. And for me, that was really, it was really pivotal, but I didn't realize how much it would be that at the time, as these things are, because it was just one moment in time, but it kind of, there were many things at that time which were kind of bringing me along a certain path, but that was a huge event. I felt a huge kind of, what can you say? Maybe like it's not even a seed it's a type of seed being planted, definitely. There were already seeds that were planted, long before that, but to see a person that was living a life of devotion at a depth which I hadn't observed before, and that also a woman, because generally in our society most of the people that are in positions of leadership or spiritual guidance tend to be men,
right?
And so it's not something that you see very often, that's a person like that. So yeah, I kept in touch with her after that. She really invited that with me. And many also. But I think she would be that way with many, and maybe not everyone would take her up on it, or they might feel like, oh, she probably doesn't really mean it. And I'm sure I thought that too. But then I used to correspond with her, and then I went kind of out of my way at various times to go and spend time with her. Her and Dina Tarine Dasi, who is her companion. They lived together, and so the experiences that I had with them, I think the longest time I spent was 3 weeks, and they just they were really transformational experiences for me.
So what does this day mean to you? Her when she departed this world, like, what do you feel today?
Well, interestingly, I was thinking this morning, what do I feel today? Like, we were up really late last night, and woke up this morning kind of like, ugh. I mean, we don't drink alcohol, but you can still have this hangover feeling from even spiritual events, just driving and, doing things and eating late at night. And I was thinking that actually so much about a day, it can be meaningful depending on your consciousness of how you approach that day, and then how you, what you do when you wake up. And so I had a bit of a kind of a bit of a late start today, and I'm thinking that really the essence of what this day means to me is reflecting on what that gift of being in her company has given me in my life, and the things that she taught me, and whether I'm really applying them or not. So the date in the Vedic system, things follow the lunar calendar, right? So the day that she passed is not always honored on the date that it was, but on the lunar day. Right. So it's the first time it's ever fallen on New Year's Day, but I'm thinking it's quite appropriate, because I'm just reflecting on how can I put the things that she taught me or that she exemplified better into practice this year. And those are things that, when I say, how has it impacted my life, it's kind of incredible how such brief association with somebody can, the analogy of a seed is very good, because the seed is planted, and then for the rest of your life you can be watering that seed, and you see it continues to grow in ways that you would not have expected, or it's like it never ceases to become relevant, or something that you can turn to for a sense of direction. Right. So
give us an example of something that she, when you said, the things that she taught you or the lessons you learned from her. Give us an example of something specific.
Well, I'll give a general picture, and then something specific. So just generally in her company, it was evident that she was so absorbed at all times in her consciousness, in devotional thoughts, you know, whether of her spiritual master, of Krishna, kind of all the time.
Really?
She would sing throughout the day. She would pray. She would be very like prayerful. She would be like, you know, we like prayer in this house, like we pray throughout the day, and she would pray like every, you know, different times of the day and meal times and before you go to bed, and it was just like a prayerful existence, and very, very grave, yet at the same time she was extremely grave and sober, but with a real lightness and humor at the same time, which is something that's very hard to fathom usually. And so that level of absorption and love, really, love for everything that she was doing, and attention to detail, which they say love is in the details. She was extremely refined in attention to detail with everything. Like one time she was getting me to help with this. They were making this sign for the community where she lived, and it was the sign that said Sharanagati Village. It was like wood and painted, and she was a calligrapher among many other things. She had trained with one of the greatest calligraphers in America many years ago, and so she was getting me to fill in she had drawn out the outline of the letters, and I had to fill them in. And you know, I consider myself an artistic person, and so I was like, yeah, I can do that. And so I was doing it, and then she came up to me and she was just like observing what I was doing, and I can't remember what she said, but she made some comment like, you're make sure you're not kind of going out of the lines, or it was like, and I kind of had this feeling of like, well, I'm not, like, I know you know, not in a really like kind of bullshit way, but I was like, no, I know how to do this. And then I noticed that I'd been like not actually that careful, and you know, it was just a very, very instructive. I found that like in her company, I was drawn to be more refined, to be more attentive to details, and for me that was very powerful, because I could see that that's really what love means. And so that's like a general picture of something of who she was. There's so much more I could say, but one specific thing that she really, she kind of went on and on every time I would see her, because she knew that in my life also at that time, a little after I had first met her, I started, it's actually 10 years ago, just this past month, that I started doing these kind of kirtan traveling things. And so when I would visit, she would ask me about how that's going, and she was living in a very remote place, so she wasn't really so much in touch with this whole new kirtan scene of, you know, how kirtan had become popular amongst people in the yoga world. And so she would ask me questions about it, and then she would also kind of inquire deeper, like, so what do you feel about that, and how are you reflecting on this? And we would read together things from writings of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. He has this book, there's this book Amrita Vani, which is like a compilation of different instructions in the format of question and answers. So she would often get that out, and we would read through, especially this chapter about kirtan. And
you touched on that.
I think I spoke about that. So she was really pushing me to understand what is real kirtan, and time and time again, not to get swept up in a kind of the name and fame game, which as soon as you're doing something that people appreciate, you're basically open to that, you know, pride and, you know, getting addicted to appreciation from people and praise. So that was something she really drove home, aside from, to me specifically, aside from all the other things that I was just learning by being in her company.
Right, that's good. But more about kirtan, like, she did she ever mention anything about anything else, like more specifically about, you know, you traveling around and doing kirtan and the fame and stuff, not just from that book that you were reading, but separate from that?
She was kind of simultaneously encouraging and also a little discouraging.
Really? Tell us about that.
Yeah, she didn't. I think she was very protective of me. She liked me, and she, well, I could say she loved me. That's what I felt. She was protective, and she didn't quite trust this kind of thing of, you know, getting flown around. And at the time, I was also just, you know, I was just open to the experience. I just graduated university, and it's like, whoa, okay, let's go around the world. And it was very exciting for me to be using my artistic abilities in service, because I had gone a long time thinking that I would never really get an opportunity to do that. So but yeah, she was always like cautionary, and she would praise my ability in a very, you know, like, she would really praise my ability, but she wouldn't necessarily praise in a way that was like encouraging to do that specifically. And at times I definitely felt that she kind of disapproved or didn't really, you know, connect with it. She would either say nothing, or, you know, sometimes I would write to her and I'd tell her about things, and she would kind of say something, but in such a way that I could tell that it was like, okay, it's not very important, you know.
Wow.
And then she would ask about things that she felt were important.
Right.
And so I had this sense that it was like a little mixed feeling about it.
I like what you said about her, that the first thing, that she was very absorbed in what she was doing.
Yeah.
That's like something I always strive for, but it's just like it's virtually impossible, I feel like, in this day and age with like cell phones and social media and your just life in general. Yeah. I mean, she was living like the sadhu life, right?
She was, yeah.
But so that kind of absorption is easier. I mean, I wouldn't say easier, but it's, you know, that's what was important for her in her life. And I think that's what inspires people. Totally. Yeah. That's what inspires people. When you see someone who is just like completely absorbed, it doesn't even have to be Krishna conscious things. It could just be something like someone's like super into what they're doing and they don't really think about anything else. That's cool, because if it's like so spread around and spread thin, it's like,
well, I think in this day and age, and to our generation specifically, that is captivating, because we've like almost entirely lost the ability to do that.
It's true.
A lot because of technology. True. I would say maybe even wholly because of technology and the environment that we're living in. Yeah. But technology is a huge part of it. I mean, I remember, I think the first time I visited her, like the first time I went to stay, I'm not sure if I had a cell phone, or I definitely wasn't using it in the way that I am now. And I remember, like, at that time, definitely I was appreciating, I mean, it was the place she was living was very beautiful and very remote. And when I arrived there, like, I kept a journal always, and I wrote this I just like kind of like effusive like entry, like, I just feel so blissful and happy here. I just can't imagine being happier. I just felt so happy in that place and in that company. It was like what you actually hanker for. That's how I felt. And then I remember one of the last times I visited her, some years, about 6 years or 5 years after that. And I had then, you know, an iPhone for many years, and I'd been staying in New York City, and I'd definitely been around more, you know, just being exposed to the world more. And although I was always deeply appreciative of the time, I just remember that I had my cell phone there, and, you know, time to time through the day, I would go and check it. And I remember noticing myself doing that and being like, this is so dumb. Like, she's not doing that. Like, why do I have to check my phone? Yeah. But it was like already, it was like a compulsion. And I could say I struggle with that and many other things. I agree with you. It's absorption is very, very difficult thing to achieve in this day and age. And I think we really have to fight for it. Last night we were at ceremony where some of our friends made some important spiritual vows. And I remember one person that was speaking said that it's kind of a battle for that attentiveness and absorption, and we actually have to like the battle. We have to want to be in that battle. Otherwise we've lost already, because it's just the environment that we're in is everything is pushing against that. It's forcing us to be fractured in all directions.
Right. So now, after many years, it's been how long since she
passed away in 2012 December.
Okay.
So it's been 7 years.
So 7 years. So you've done a lot of growing and in all ways since then.
Yeah.
So how do you feel like from being traveling Kirtania and all that? How do you feel you've kind of been able to maybe imbibe, or maybe you haven't, some of the things that she's said to you, or instructions or whatever? Do you understand kind of what I'm...
Yeah. I think one of the things that I feel that there's a lot more that I haven't even touched on integrating into my life than things that I have. And that's kind of a frustration, or not a frustration, but it's something that's like, it's always there in my consciousness that I'm not exactly living the life that I would like to know, remembering that example and knowing, how that is. And there's different reasons for that. But I'd say the things that I do feel I'm trying to apply sincerely is to have some absorption when I am doing service, whether it be kirtan or whether it be anything that I'm doing. I remember that mood of her gravity, and I really try to be that way. I try to not take things. I mean, I think I'm also by nature a little like that. I kind of tend to be, maybe some people say, too serious about things or whatever, But I feel that strongly, and I'm very attracted to that, to have some level of gravity and absorption when you're doing something, spiritual activities specifically. And then with kirtan, I mean, one of the things that she really gifted me was a renewed appreciation for the songs of the acharyas, Vaishnava acharyas, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, specifically Bhaktivinoda Thakur, also others, but specifically him. I think I might have described on the previous episode how that was, but she definitely inspired me without asking, and also specifically asked that I try to also share these songs with others, and especially with younger people. She would also ask me to be there for people younger than myself, and try and train others and give to others things that I've learned. And so I've been for quite many years. I've been doing maybe about 5 or 6 years, teaching courses on Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs and singing them with devotees and singing them myself. And a lot of people remark to me that how much they appreciate that, and I realize that it's something that's a little bit niche within our, wider society of ISKCON and culture. Like it's become a bit niche because people don't do it very much. Maybe just don't have time. But she certainly felt that it was extremely important. So I tried to keep that alive, and also I think, just having trying to keep the perspective that she gave me when I was speaking to her. Like when I was speaking to her, I was a lot younger. I was 18, 19, 20, 21, and now 31. It feels like, in one sense, a long time ago, and some of the things she was saying to me, I didn't really understand at the time how much of a relevance they would have. So she would really explain that you don't have to be in anxiety in your life. Like she described to me one time that the river of life is always flowing towards that same destination. And you have to kind of surrender to the flow. It doesn't mean you don't do anything. But she said, put your hands in the air, and you know, like they say that when you, like, if you fall out of a whitewater rafting thing, you kind of like lie straight. I don't know if you put your hands up, but they say just lie and let yourself, like, you'll eventually get carried, you know, where you need to go.
Right.
So she said that, put your hands in the air and go with the flow. And it sounds like it's kind of a cliche, even, you know, the analogy of a river of your life. We hear these things a lot, but to really realize that in a deep way, I mean, I don't know, I have so many worries, and so many people I know are, you know, in anxiety about goals and this and that, and have I achieved success, and it's not that it's irrelevant to be responsible and attentive to what am I doing with my life and my time and energy, but to understand that there's something called surrender, and to understand that is like a life's work.
Definitely. Did she ever comment on anything like being a Diksha guru as a woman, or women's issues in ISKCON, or was she like kind of above that? That you know of, if she commented on that, anything?
She definitely commented on it. She didn't say much to me about it. I know that there were people that definitely wanted to become her disciple in a formal sense, but I don't think she really wanted to take that role. Right. She wouldn't have at the time been allowed to within the you know, the context of ISKCON. Right. But I don't think she wanted to anyway. She had in her life come up against so much controversy. Not controversy. She'd been a part of, somehow in her life, she'd kind of been at the epicenter of all these catastrophic events within the society through the like late 70s, 80s, 90s. Like whenever there was something that went wrong, she somehow was living in that place at that time.
Really?
Yeah, like she was, anyway, I don't know if it's necessary to go into all the details, but different leaders, you know, fell away from their positions or did things that weren't very good. Right. And she happened to be sometimes under their authority or kind of jurisdiction at that time. Oh, really? So she moved so many times to different places, and I think at a certain point in her life, she just felt like I don't need this type of, you know, disturbance. And she really wanted to she wasn't interested in being kind of political or controversial. Even if she had certain thoughts, her priority was devotional life. Right. And she wanted to live in a place where she could just focus on that and not have to engage so much. Although she was an active voice at a certain time in speaking up about women's role within the movement. But yeah, specifically about kind of being a guru, not really.
I haven't really delved into that woman Diksha guru thing. But
it is a thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean I think it's been a thing for a while. I just don't see the reason why not. Why wouldn't they be, like, if someone's qualified to be a guru, why wouldn't they be allowed to give initiation in ISKCON? Yeah. I guess I should research more about it, but I don't know what's the hold up.
My understanding is that most of the opposition comes from India.
Oh, really? Oh, really? Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my understanding, and I mean, this is going out on the internet, so a disclaimer is that I'm not, like, you know, in-depth educated about it, but everything I've heard and everything I've understood is that there's a bit of a split of opinion, and most of the differing of opinion is between those who are more from the West, or, you know, from a Western mindset, and those who are from India. And that in India there's, you know, there's so many centers in India now. There used to be just a few ISKCON centers in India decades ago, but now I think there's like 400 centers or something like that.
Yeah, like 10 in each city or something.
Right,
like that.
And so I, as far as I understand, those who are in position of leadership or authority are strongly against it, and so there's some sense that it could split the movement, because that could cause a fracture if there's some decision made and, you know, all of India doesn't agree and the West wants to do something else.
Really?
I don't know. That was what my understanding was. But I know that some say that, you know, it's not traditional, or it's not according to Vedic culture, and that's why those who are more rooted in India and a certain traditional way of looking at things don't appreciate it. But whether that's true or not, I'm in the same boat as you. I really can't understand really why it wouldn't be fine if someone's qualified. We're not talking about people that aren't qualified, obviously. So if someone's qualified, then what is the problem?
I think right now ISKCON has a policy of no, like if someone wants to be a Diksha Guru, they can be a Diksha Guru, but the way they become is if there's someone, let me see how to phrase this.
No objection?
No objection.
Yeah.
So there's a no objection rule. So even if someone is not qualified and there's no objection, well
people would object if they're not qualified, I believe.
Let's say, for example, let's say in the future all the GBCs become like they're my buddies.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, I want to be guru, and they're like,
okay, no objection.
No objection. You're my friend, and I know you. Like, you're a good guy.
Yeah.
You go to temple on Sundays, and that's good.
Right.
But that's not, you know, it's like it should be a little bit. But you can't legislate that kind of thing. Like you can't legislate guruship and all that stuff. It's a real tricky subject.
Tricky area, very tricky area. I mean, it's it's not something that I have a great deal of understanding with in terms of policies and all of that. But that's what I've heard also. I mean, it's interesting because there's a formal process of accepting a guru, and there's also not the informal, but it's not according to any ceremony. It's really in the heart. It takes place in the heart.
Yeah, it's faith.
And, it's faith. It's faith, and it's a commitment to to serve that person and their instructions with your life, and so that how can you can't legislate or determine what someone feels about that or what not. If there's someone qualified, I know that there are many. I mean, Yamuna Devi herself, I'd say that there were many of us that feel that way about her. And some of us even considered to ask her that question, but and some did and some didn't. But regardless of that, we feel that way about her, and we consider her like that in our lives. And I know that there are others who are also qualified, and people consider them in that way. So in one sense, it's kind of, whether it's yay or nay, it's gonna go on. It's just a matter of whether it's formally accepted or not.
Right. I'm just speculating, but maybe the people on the other side, the opposition, who say no women Diksha Gurus, maybe they think like hordes and hordes of women will come and be like, we want to be gurus also. But I don't think it's going to be like that at all.
I don't think it will either.
I could think of like, maybe 5 or 10 who are like, who would probably be like, people have been approaching me and I should probably do something about this, or else they're going to, be discouraged or something. It's kind of silly, to be honest. So any GBCs or anybody watching, let's do something about this, man. Like,
I know. But the thing is that time changes everything, and things will change in time, I believe. So
something I worry about is like succession. Like all these older devotees who are leaders of ISKCON, like real, leaders. Like when I feel like each of them should like take a young person under their wing and be like, hey, this is how you do this and this is how you do that. You don't have to take up the responsibility now, but just know how to do it. Instead of like everyone dying and us being like, we should probably do something. Like, who's gonna take over? Like, who knows how to do that? Spreadsheets? Does anyone know how to make spreadsheets? I know there's like GBC College and all that stuff. But I don't think there's like any really young people on there. I think it's like to be on that GBC college, you have to have had service in ISKCON for like 20 years or 15 or 20 years. I'm probably wrong about that, but like let's get some like 20 years old, 30-year-olds. Like that's how this movement started and spread, you know?
There is I know that there's been some type of leadership college or leadership program started in Mayapur this past year by Bhakti Rasayana Sagar Swami.
Right.
And that with that intention, they want to train up people and give them access to the spiritual and kind of managerial training. I think it's specifically targeted towards those who would be inclined to be kind of temple leaders or community leaders, president type people.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for like all services in ISKCON. I mean, I've often thought like, all different types of services. Like, someone like, Balabhadra Prabhu in New Vrindavan, looking after the cows for decades of his life. People should be training under him to learn how to do that. Or
maybe if they are. I mean, he's in Alachua now, right?
Yeah, I think they are. I think people have trained with him.
Sure.
But it's just an example. People that are really masterful in their service because of their decades of experience.
Yeah.
I think there are some that do that, and maybe they just take their own initiative to do that.
I think for young people who are maybe watching this, I think it's important that we approach the people you're inspired by, older people who are doing, like you said, they're masters of their service and stuff. Like, approach them and try to learn from them.
Definitely.
Because it's like when they're gone, it's like you'll regret that.
Definitely.
Like, so many people regret, like, when Ayendra Prabhu left, like, we could have been there with him and learning from him. Like, we learn so much about the person after they leave.
Right.
Like, it's, so I always say, to myself and to my friends, like if there's someone that's inspiring to you, go get their association. Go out of your way and get their association, because they ain't gonna be around for forever.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I feel so grateful to my younger self for taking the initiative to go and spend time with Yamuna Devi, because I'm even like, okay, wow, that was a good choice, well done me, because I don't think I always make good choices like that, but it's something really compelled me to do that, and it's really gifted me with things, like I say, that I can draw on for the rest of my life. But I could have taken advantage of that so much more, in the sense of asking more questions and asking to learn things and spending more time. She would have welcomed me to be there for more time, but when you're young, you kind of always a little bit like all over the place, and I could do this, and that's exciting, and this kirtan festival, and but that is to be trained and to be guided and instructed, it's just priceless.
It is.
And I mean, there's certain people in the last few years, like some viewers may know Kulangana Devi Dasi, who was at Bhaktivedanta Manor. She was there since she was there since before I was born, and so I grew up with her, just always there in my life. And she was very famous for making the milk sweets that would be offered every day. And I ate those sweets, my whole life also. And at a certain age, I had this desire, like, I'd really love to learn how to make them from her. And I would say it to my mom time to time, like, do you think she would teach me? And she would be like, yeah, you should ask her. She loves you. Go ask her. And I was like, I'm shy. And then one time, I think my mom mentioned it to her on my behalf, and she was saying, yes, definitely. And for some reason, I just never did it. I never took the step. And I was thinking, oh, anyway, I'll do it another time. And then she passed away a couple years ago, and I was just thinking, I mean, on one hand, she trained other people and I can learn from them, but it's like, why didn't I take that opportunity? Why not grab for it when the chance is there? Definitely. And on this, anyway. No, please. on this point of succession, I think it's so important. I mean, it's on my mind a lot. And certain people, I could say, I think I spoke about them before in the last episode, but one couple, Manoram and Jai Shri Radhe, who are basically the champions of young people in ISKCON for ISKCON Youth Minister. He's the ISKCON Youth Minister. Yeah. ISKCON Youth Minister, but like I would say, yeah, severely underappreciated for what they're doing. I mean, they're like they're doing work which is incredibly vital, without almost any funding support apart from people individually donating to support their activities, and just even not a great succession plan even for them, for what they're doing for other young people. Because I think many of us we're kind of trying to figure out our lives. It's like the perennial. We're trying to figure out what do I do in this world? How do I make money? Where do I settle myself? Family, children, like just figuring out the basic elements of life. But in the meantime, time is passing and the landscape is changing pretty
definitely
dramatically.
What were the other? So the relationship with young people with Srila Prabhupada's books. I don't know how we could speak for all young people, but I don't know. Maybe you can give your experience.
Well, I was gonna say, I'm gonna do a segue.
Please.
It's not actually a segue. I'm actually continuing the same topic.
Okay.
Back to this topic of succession.
Sure.
What I was thinking about, aside from practical training of things.
Yeah.
I think what's more important, because many of us are going to grow up and be trained in ways that, for those who grew up in the movement or children of people that joined at a very young age, like my dad joined when he was 17. He dropped out of school, and my mom dropped out of university. She was training to be a nurse, and so she only completed her education when she was in her 40s, or I think she was in her 50s. She completed her degrees and things. Though that generation, we saw our parents with a real missionary kind of zeal, devotional zeal, and acquiring many skills as they went along. They became incredibly skilled in a certain way, but they didn't have certain abilities necessarily because they had kind of rejected that type of life. Whereas most of us have gone the other direction. We've had education and we may have skills that they didn't have. But I think what we could be more concerned about in terms of succession is the devotional depth and knowledge, and that's something that I think about a lot. That many of, or most of these older devotees they're so knowledgeable in terms of scripture and just practical experience in devotional life. It's about actually cultivation of their spiritual, kind of realization and service.
Yeah.
And I think for many of us, we exist more in they've had either a lifetime or significant chunks of their life with this kind of like all absorbed, completely immersed, fire of a kind of devotion type of life. Whereas I think many of us haven't really experienced that.
Totally, yeah.
And we haven't even had necessarily, we haven't taken the opportunity to become immersed like that. And that's something I feel more concerned about, only because, if you don't have something, how can you give it? And so they've given us, but are we going to be able to give that to anyone else or experience it for ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's really about your internal, revelations and realizations about devotion, Krishna consciousness that helps us move forward. And it's hard. It's hard when we think we know. We think we know what it's all about, but we don't study or we don't really educate ourselves, and it's kind of like, coasting or that's
kind of a certain type of, not complacency, like a conscious complacency, like, oh, I'm just gonna whatever, but it's like a certain type of complacency because we may not even realize what depth of experience is available to us if we just turn up the heat a bit.
I mean, that comes by, like, how did you get that?
I don't think I have that. but I'm seeing
but to have that realization of what you're saying, some people don't even get to that realization. It's not important.
Yeah.
Like, you obviously find it important. I find it important as well.
Yeah.
But it's like, to get there is like another thing. But to understand that that's an issue, and
I think one of the ways that you understand that easily is through association.
Of course.
When you're with someone that you see, wow, they're so deep and I'm so not.
Yeah.
Then you realize there's a gulf of difference between us, and how do I come closer to what they're experiencing and their vision of the world and themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so then there's some like fire of inspiration to want to know, and
I think that takes a certain humility.
Humility?
Yeah. To understand that, someone else has something that I don't have, or that I'd like to experience.
Yeah.
But now in this day and age, everyone's like, everyone's
an expert.
Everyone's an expert, and everyone's about like, me, I'm this way, and I'm complete, and I'm happy, and I'm good, and I don't need anything, or I don't need anyone to help me, So I think Krishna consciousness is going so like against that, in the sense of like, we are, what I Prabhu said, Kali Yuga creatures. We're Kali Yuga creatures, and we're
sounds like a type of lizard.
that that we need association, we need help, and we need that, and that's not something bad. That's something good. Our disqualification is our qualification in one way.
Yeah. It just came to my mind that they say, like, if people have like an addiction, or like an alcohol addiction or whatever kind of, you can become addicted to so many things, but the first step is admitting that you have a problem.
Yeah, the 12-step thing.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think so often we don't want to admit, or we don't want to see that we have a problem, meaning I really need help.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more urgent than I might want to admit. That I really need to have a sense of urgency, and that this is actually vital to seek out this type of company, and vital to do these things like reading, like studying, like we were talking about. I know I don't have that to the degree that I would like to. I mean, there's a huge amount I'm not feeling, and I want to feel a certain an urgency, because it's just I see the years pass by, and it's like, man, it's very slow progress, if any progress, and even progress, it can be even measured like, do I even feel more humble? Like, maybe I don't even feel more humble, maybe I think I'm more like whatever. I've learned stuff, and I know things, and the environment of this world, and especially the media, social media, encourages us to be kind of presenting a certain face to the world.
Exactly.
And that can be detrimental, for sure. So I think it's vital to be with people who are, who have those values. Yeah. And or to put ourselves in situations where we're not in that familiar zone, like even just our comfort zone of our home and our life can induce us to be just kind of locked into that way of thinking. So a lot, like over past 15 years or so, it's become pretty popular to do retreats of different kinds, and amongst young people, definitely popular to travel and do pilgrimages, but sometimes the pilgrimage is also just kind of like fun with your friends, social. But I would say, we need to take advantage of those opportunities for transformation outside of our comfort zone as much as possible.
Transformation is I've seen it a lot with not a lot, but with certain friends of mine. They're a certain way, and they grow up as devotees, but then they meet a senior devotee, a Vaishnav, and their life completely changes in an amazing way, and you're like, man, what happened to you? Like, what and it was just, I don't know, I was inspired by this person, and I changed this, and I wanted to make this kind of commitments, and that's really inspiring to see.
It's really
and I think
magical.
and I urge all the young people listening to this, you know, I'm like urging young people a lot today. I don't know why. I guess because I'm a father now, so I feel like I feel fatherly toward people. Like, yeah. But
we're old now. We can just
but you know, if you have a little bit of tinge of like attraction for Krishna consciousness, like go now. If you're really young and you don't have any responsibilities, like really try to go for it.
Yeah.
Live in the ashram, you know. Join you know what I always wanted to do was be a personal servant to a sannyasi.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's one of the biggest regrets, man. Like I totally wanted to do that. I still want to do that. Like I think about it. Like we were with that sannyasi yesterday, and it was like, man, I want to be. You know, his servant was giving him medicine and stuff, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. That sounds cool. Like, I have to think about washing his clothes and stuff. Some people might think that's dumb, but I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I would love to do that. And then they tell you, and then like you get kind of like in part of their intimate life. They like tell you things, and like I've had so many friends that have been like personal servants to sannyasis, and they I guess in some ways it's dangerous to be really close, but if you have the right mood of servitude and like stuff like that. I mean, I guess I'm Tulsi's personal servant in some ways. But and she's also my personal servant in ways as well. So it's a partnership, but what's that?
I think the latter is more correct.
All right. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. I think your point was about grabbing those opportunities where you can, and I would say also, you know, to the young people of the world, I don't think you'll miss out on anything by taking those opportunities. I think we're
totally.
Many of us are so. I'm not saying be irresponsible, but we are definitely following this program that's dictated by Western society. That you know, you do school and you do university and you do like whatever, and
get right into the workforce,
and then get into the workforce, and then you know get married, and then it's like
locked in,
goal after goal, and you know when does the time come for kind of excavating your spiritual self? When does that time come?
When does the time come for excavating your spiritual self? That's a good quote.
Does it come like, you know, on Sundays, or like, you know, before you go to bed, quickly read something?
Yeah,
like it doesn't happen like that. And so we can be creative in the ways that we find time for that, because everyone has their particular life circumstances, and not everyone can just go join an ashram or things like that. But it's kind of like being vigilant to grab the time that's available for that. Because really, if you think about it, like what else has more value? I mean, I don't know. I think I'm just really conscious of time at the moment, and for all you 20s, people in your 20s listening, it happens as you start getting older.
The next thing you know, you'll be 30, 33, like me.
Yeah. I used to watch, I've never been like watching tons of movies and things, but I used to watch more TV and movies and stuff when I was younger. But I find lately, like I still time to time watch a movie, but I find...
Oh my gosh, Jahnavi Harrison. Oh my God, you just said that. I'm going to have to cut that out. We don't go to the cinema house.
But I find that every time after I watch it, I just have this feeling like, oh man, you know, that was like 2 hours of time. It was 2 hours of life. And what did I get from that? Was it really that funny? Was it really that interesting? Did it really...
Right.
And I know that sounds kind of... Yeah, to some people that might sound really boring or a dull kind of way to live, but I don't feel bad about thinking in that way. I'm trying to use that as an inspiration to push me towards doing things that I do feel, wow, that was a great way to use my time.
Yeah, time is,
you know, because and then even if you're not like, we're so also bound once we come into that time of, you know, family life and children and partner. There's so many things you have to do that you might not think is like your ultimate way to spend your time, you know, just
totally
taking your kids to the park and you have to sit there for ages and they're playing, or I don't know, I'm not a parent, so I shouldn't say that, but we can also cultivate a certain type of mental discipline that when I have time, I don't just space out, but I kind of direct my mind towards thoughts or contemplations that are going to be, nourishing and uplifting. That takes a lot of discipline. So
definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I see my time when I remember, like, maybe 10 years ago, like, it was like I had all the time in the world to do anything.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't know what to do with all the time that I had. And now it's like I'm like grabbing for time to do like even the most like insignificant things that I want to do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, well, how am I going to fit that in? And like, it just gets more and more complicated.
Yeah.
Life gets more complicated in not in a bad way, but in just a natural way of, if you want to follow the the grahasta life of kids and family and job and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's to your point of now, if young people don't try to follow that, if you don't have to, if you don't want to, take time to do things that are important for your spiritual life and your internal progress. Like, I remember Jadwaita Maharaj said something like to someone, if you can't be a brahmachari for a year, be for 6 months. If you can't do 6 months, do a month. Not a month, a week. Not a week, a day. And then it was like, someone's like, a day, Maharaj? And they're like, yeah. And you can look back on that day and say, that was the best day of my life.
Yeah, right. And this is about the opportunity to experience something that changes your perspective on life.
Totally.
And because most of us learn by experience, for the most part, we can't just hear about it and then understand it usually. So you have to put yourself in that space. I mean, I can say, like, for instance, just kind of to go back to like a kirtan kind of example, when I remember kirtans where I was present with Yamuna Devi and others, and I was experiencing a kirtan experience that I had never had before. It was like the bar just got raised to a certain point, and I was like, whoa, this is what kirtan is, like, whoa. And it was like completely, compelling and captivating. And then from that time onwards, the bar was there. And I was like, I wanted the bar to be there always. And so everything else, many other things just felt like, I'm not really that interested anymore,
Right.
So to have those opportunities to raise the bar or, expand your expand the limit of your experience is priceless. There's nothing that's more precious than that.
It's true. There's no, I mean, the experiences I've had before I got married and before I really got into my grahastha life are just like, I just look back on them and I remember them, and it kind of keeps me going in my life, of my spiritual life. And well, anyway, what's the other topics? Well, what's the time like?
I don't think my alarm went off. It's 10 minutes left on my clock.
Oh, 10 minutes.
It's
okay.
midday.
What other things do we want to discuss?
Well, we were going to talk about kirtan kind of in the modern day, and some people were talking about that. You just kind of the modern picture. I don't remember how much we touched on that last time.
Modern day what do you mean?
Versus how things used to be, or traditional culture.
I saw something funny. I think it was a meme or something. Someone was like, do you guys remember when kirtan had no talking in between? Isn't that funny?
Wait, talking in between.
Remember, a kirtan didn't have anyone talking. It was just kirtan. Like, when people are like, again.
Oh, right.
Louder. With your heart.
Right.
Remember when kirtan didn't have that? It was just a kirtan. Just kirtan. Like, I remember that as a kid.
Yeah, I know.
Like, no one said anything. It was just like, the kirtan starts and then the kirtan ends. There's no talking in between. I thought it was so funny. It's so funny. I mean, it helps to you know, if for new people and things, to help them guide their meditation and stuff. But like when it's like a bunch, if it's like all like experienced devotees and people start talking, I'm just like, don't, just come on, let's do it. Like, you don't need to.
Yeah.
I'm opinionated. Deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, culture, you know, culture evolves and changes over the years. That's how it always has been and will be, I'm sure. But if there's something that's an essence to be retained, you would hope that the changes don't change the essence of what's being delivered. But
meaning for like, so the topic
so
you're talking about
kirtan,
from back then till now.
Yeah, so in terms
retained,
of
right?
Yeah,
Needs
I mean, with anything cultural, you know.
Yes.
But kirtan is a culture. It's an art form. It's a devotional experience and an art and a seva. And but it's, yeah, certainly like the landscape has changed a lot. Even for people that have grown up in the movement, I often think about this, that there's like also there's like what would you say, it's like, you know, like rock, like when you have a cross section of rock, I always remember like learning in geography, like these different layers of rock, and it's like wherever you first started in your experience of kirtan, you have a different outlook on like what it is now and what it used to be, and so there's, you know, one thing is like people that grew up in the movement, like we remember the way that, you know, Harinam was and the way that temple kirtan was, and everyone's standing up, like there's no question that we're all like sitting down. But then like say you've come into the, you know, the company of devotees maybe just 10 years ago, 15 years ago, your experience will be quite different, and you might not see that like, oh, this has changed so much. It's like, no, this is how it is, like this is how it's meant to be, and so that's how things change. And so for those people who feel like there is something important to be carried through, that becomes like a responsibility, like, okay, let's keep this tradition, let's hand it on, otherwise it does disappear. So.
I remember the mridanga playing being a lot different.
Yeah, definitely.
Like
it's
there
one
was
of my pet peeves.
Really?
Or the pet peeve is that people now call it like old school beats and old school. Yes. And I get annoyed because I feel that, I mean, of course it has to be classified in some way. Yeah. But language creates meaning and perception. Language shapes the world by what we say. So I feel like people saying it's old school, I feel like that makes it something of the past, right? And that it's not relevant to now. But that way of playing is like amazingly joyful.
I want to bring it back. Like, I want to bring it back. I want to just like bring back all those old beats, old school beats.
Yeah, I often when I'm leading kirtan, I often say old school. You know, I hate saying old school, but unless I say that, they don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, like new mridanga players these days don't even know those beats. Oh my god, I could play that for hours.
I know.
So good.
I mean, it's not that I don't like the way that mridanga is played now, in the sense that I appreciate the artistry and, you know, the ability that people have. Yeah. But I think there's a lot that's not even, hasn't really been experienced by a lot of younger players, and so there's a certain like groove, or it's like a rasa of, it's like a kirtan rus, you know.
Yeah, it's like you're churning. Yeah. Like I remember a kirtan where it would go for hours, and you're just the same tempo of that old beat, and you're just like everyone's getting into the holy name, and it's just like such a.
And it's nothing to do with rhythmic complexity. No. Or breakdowns. You know, people who are watching who know about modern kirtan culture in ISKCON, like breakdowns and
breakdown,
it really, I have no taste for it, really. I mean, I'll do it time to time, things like that, but I don't really have a taste for it, because for me it's not compelling. Whereas that experience, it's mystical to be in a kirtan when you're like, man, we've been singing the same thing for like 2 hours now, and the beat hasn't really changed that much, but I feel like increasing joy and bliss, you know, throughout my body, and I'm just feeling so.
That's like
it's not something material. It's
no. I think a lot of people miss that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be like, oh, I'm this. I'm actually. I know actually what's the real thing and this and that. And you guys are missing that. But like for example, like a few months back, Thursday night kirtan in the Bhakti Center, Jahnavi Maharaj came and they were like, Maharaj, would you like to sing? And I was just like, I honestly was like, oh, I've never really heard Maharaj sing a kirtan before, but okay, let's hear it, you know. And he sang the regular Prabhupada tune, and Ananta was playing mridanga, and they went into that beat, and he just sang the Mahamantra just like that. And people were going nuts, like literally people were jumping going completely berserk. And I was looking at it on the time, we're like, what is going on? And then we're just like, this is how Prabhupada attracted all people to come because of his own Krishna consciousness. It just was spread to the people listening and everything. And that's powerful. Yeah, it's not about complicated melodies and beats and things like that. Although those things are very nice, but
and that doesn't mean that they're not valuable and not to be used. Like I think we also can create this polarity, like, oh, it's not about complicated melodies, and therefore that means if you're singing a complicated melody, you're obviously just doing it for attention.
And you're not advanced.
You're not advanced enough to sing a simple tune with a simple beat.
Yeah,
it's not about that.
Yes,
it's like the experience and understanding that kirtan is something spiritual and transcendental and independent to the perception of like, oh, if I do this like that, then that will make people go wild. Like, yeah, you may even do something and people will go wild, but they're not going wild necessarily because of devotional feeling. It's a sentimental wave, and it's a rhythm, and it's like, oh, the rhythm makes me want to dance, you know. It's difficult because it's so subtle, the difference between one thing and another, and you have to be very reflective and sensitive and introspective to be able to distinguish the difference, because a room full of people jumping up and down because of devotion and because of the beat could appear exactly the same, but there is a tangible quality which will be different, which should be quite clear the more we cultivate our sensitivity to these things.
As being like a kirtaniya yourself and going out and doing kirtan and stuff, do you really consciously think about your own spiritual life, like your own internal sadhana and things like that? Like, how important is that to you now, now that you're really out there, doing that? It's like a super important thing, right?
Yeah, it is super important. I mean, it's one of the reasons why it's not that I felt a pressure to. It's something that I wanted to do very much, but 2 years ago I took formal initiation. I wanted to very intentionally be committed to a life of sadhana and spiritual dedication, because I think it is extremely important, when not just because of leading kirtan, but doing anything, trying to do anything as a service, and especially if you're trying to lead people in some way, by dint of that, being given a position of leadership, it's your responsibility to do the, behind the closed door, whatever you do.
It's an hour.
All right, we can continue a little bit. So, yeah, I think it's extremely important. I mean, like I say, honestly, I don't feel at all satisfied with my own practice. I think I'm doing what I would consider like the bare minimum, and I want to be doing much more. And it's something I'm trying to work towards in small steps, because I'm as flawed as they come, as like so many others. But I think I mentioned this on the last podcast, and it's something that Yamuna Devi said to me, that when you lead kirtan, there's an invisible person sitting down there with you to lead kirtan. and that person will not be seen, but that person will be felt by everyone. And that person is you at every other minute of your life, of everything else that you're doing.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And so she was making the point that everything you do at every other time is impacting the experience that you're able to serve in helping to manifest for others, leading kirtan. So I really did take that to heart, and I'm like I say, a very flawed person, but I try to remember that in all circumstances. Meaning that I remember that it's a responsibility that I hold.
Yes.
When anything arises, do I do this or do I do that? I try to take that into account. Because ultimately, if we're not doing it in a genuine way, why do anything? Like, why? If we don't want the real thing, what's the point? And so we should be trying for that, at least in a sincere way, even if it's just full of holes. Like, I always think of that, full of holes like a Swiss cheese. I always think of that. It's just full of holes all the time, but still there's a sincere effort. Otherwise it's like, just enjoy life and whatever.
Enjoy life.
You're like, that's a foreign
concept. Maybe I should do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's good.
We didn't talk about kirtan that much, but we'll have to do another episode. Maybe.
Yeah, we could do another episode. Let's see what we can end off with.
I think one of the things that I think people are very interested in kirtan, and because it's something that it's kind of the core practice of the Hare Krishna movement. It's what we're known for. It's what we all agree on. It's like maybe the one thing we all agree on and feel like is extremely important. It's the Yuga Dharma, and so naturally we feel concerned about how it's performed and how we share it with the world. And I think for as much as I might say I appreciate these old school things and traditional, I think there's a very wide spectrum of ways that we can share kirtan with the world. And I'm definitely a believer that we should engage with all the ways that are possible, or all the ways that are within our own abilities. So like people might have heard, like, seen some videos on YouTube of songs and things that I've done. Like, most recently we did this Hari Om Tat Sat, and it had a verse from the Bhagavatam in that song. But we did it in a way that was, to our artistic sense, kind of something that could be popular for people to listen to, something to have on in the background when you meditate, things like that.
Right.
And I think that's maybe not, I wouldn't say just as important, but it's pretty important to do those type of things, as well as the way that we're cultivating kirtan within our own communities and spaces. All of it is important.
Yes.
And so I think I'm definitely inspired to talk about and envision the way that we can go forward and really kind of appreciate these gifts that we have, share them with others, and go deeper into them ourselves.
I think you should do a live kirtan album. Because we all know that the best live kirtan album was by Vyasaki Prabhu. Remember the Kirtan Ras?
What is it called? Kirtan Ras?
I think it's called Kirtan Ras. And then there was another one at the Manor. They did another one. Yeah. It was so good.
You've been saying that to me for a while, and other people say that to me too.
Really?
Yeah. Raghunath is another person that says that to me.
Like, you mic everything, like you mic the audience, and you tell people like, hey, come to the Bhakti Center at this time, and there'll be like a recording of a live kirtan. You have tons of people. Then you have people like in the crowd, like a loud crowd singing. So good.
Yeah. The only reason, one place that's really getting done is Radhadesh for the Kirtan Festival. They're making live recordings like that are recorded.
That's true. They're very nice. Those are very nice. But if I'm talking about if you're like an artist who has an album, like an actual album, like you have your album that you were recording in a studio, like to come out with a live thing is also really cool.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that to me. Like, it's different when you sing live than your recorded things.
Yes,
and they want to hear more of that, but in a well-recorded way.
Definitely.
And if anyone listening or watching wants to help me with that, I mean, I'm totally open to it. But
so listen, this will do. I'll play Mridanga, and you guys can all sing.
How about
and everything.
It's a Mridanga album by Namras, live Mridanga album with background vocal accompaniment by Jahnavi Harrison.
That'll be funny.
I'm definitely up for it, and in some ways, I like that more in a way because there's an experience, there's like a connection that happens in the moment with kirtan that it's very difficult to replicate in recording, if not impossible.
Yeah.
You can get close. Like with the album that I did, the first track, this Vrikshavali, Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Many people don't know that most of that was all separate things, and even the hand claps are fake.
Yeah.
You know, and I told a few people that, they were like, "What? Really?" They were imagining us all in the same space doing it. And so, sorry if I just burst your bubble. But that was partially because of the production, guidance of Gauravani, who has a lot of experience of creating that sound in the studio. But it's very difficult to do, and so I'm up for it. I think that everyone should be recording more.
How much does it cost to produce an album? I don't know anything about it.
Depends what you are trying to produce and in what way.
Yeah.
So these days, more and more people don't record in recording studios because it is expensive, and if you get good equipment and a space, there's so much you can do without that.
Yeah.
But if you're paying for a recording studio, it could be anywhere between $300 to $400 or pounds per day in the studio, and you actually end up needing quite many days if you're creating. I'm not talking necessarily about a kirtan, like just kind of sit down and play the harmonium, but if you're trying to create something artistic, if you haven't worked everything out before you go into the studio, it can take quite a lot of time. So the album that I made before, I think it cost about 15,000, but we also bought some equipment. We
Dang, 15,000?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but it was my first time doing it, and there were some things we definitely could have done in a more cost-effective way, which I hadn't had the experience before, but that was made possible because of crowdfunding for the most part.
Wow.
We had a huge... partly was from Mantrology, the record label, and partly from crowdfunding, and that way we made it possible. But actually, you can do things... even with less, just depends.
All right, so crowdfunding for Namras's Mridanga album.
Yes.
With accompaniment by Jahnavi Harrison.
Yeah. Actually, maybe a nice closing thought I just want to say about this point of crowdfunding. And this is an interesting point for everyone. I mean, anyone that knows me well, people that don't know me well might not really know much about why I'm motivated to do certain things. That's understandable. But I'm not really into the whole fame thing necessarily, but I definitely see that it's an amazing platform from which to share things, and you kind of have to get into it if you're going to do that.
Yes.
So recording things well and everything, it costs money. Doing these things, everything costs money. And I would just say one nice kind of meditation people can have going into this new year is, and this is kind of touching on something that Gauravani was talking about in your last episode about how am I spending my independent finances, whatever I have that's a little extra, to support things that I believe in and I care about. And so one thing just to be conscious of is that I think art, culture, these things generally, even in the secular world, are grossly underfunded and undersupported. That's why they have to have all these different grants and government support and things. So within the devotional community, it tends to be the same thing. So many artists or artistic people have to just survive by just doing other things because art doesn't really make money. In this coming year, think about how, if there's something, because we all are inspired by music and art and these things, but we may not have an awareness of what it takes to actually create those things. So if there's someone that's, you know, an artist or a musician or somebody that you know, if they're not asking for it, you could even inquire from them, you know, how could I support you, or what
Yes.
can I offer to a project that you're doing? And if we're all doing this in small ways, amazing things can take place, I believe. And that those creations, those devotional creative output of any medium, that really touches the heart, and it can really change lives.
Definitely. Okay, cool. So
That was my spiel, my political,
thank you, Jahnavi Harrison.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Yes.
So guys, thank you for listening, and we'll see you again sometime.
Bye.
Bye.